Welcome to Bottle Rocket with Elena Sucheva, your top hockey podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to Bottle Rocket. I'm Elena, joined as always by Jerry and Stan. And today we're also joined by Paul Patskou, an award-winning sports historian and leading expert in archival hockey footage. And George Falkowski, a four-time New York Emmy Award winner and longtime sports TV veteran, who is back with us again today. Let's jump right into it, guys. There's a lot of hockey news this week.
I got to throw on a teabag because this Vancouver trade is very unnerving to me. So tell me, who won the deal? Who won the deal, teabag?
That's going to be one that that answer can't be made until probably years down the line when we see what these players we got in return can do for us. So far, none of them have emerged as star players or anything like that. The oldest one is only 24, so we basically got 4 first rounders for Quinn Hughes, which is, I think, pretty good. I don't think they could have done much better. So, but losing Hughes, you might as well just dig a spoon right into my heart. It's devastating. I was devastated when I heard the news because I really believed he was going to stick around. But yeah, I think for now, for the short term, Minnesota won, but we'll see.
Well, Minnesota won because they got the best player, and it's always whoever gets the best player goes back to the 5-for-1 Max Bentley deal when the Leafs got Bentley. And gave up 5 guys for him, and they wound up winning 3 cups with it. But I give Billy credit points, and I take points away from the Vancouver general staff because this team has been in. From our view, very turmoil after turmoil after turmoil, and so they fire the coach, and what they get out of that, they got nothing. They fired the coach, and now they lost their best player. So I'm not enthused. I don't know about George. What do you think? You're a big trade expert.
I don't know about that, but I would say.
What do you mean you don't know about that? If I tell you, you are, you got. That's it.
Well, see, I'm formally dressed today, speaking of trades, because the first hockey game I ever saw was at Madison Square Garden, Rangers against these guys. And it was the first game after Chico Resch got traded to the Rockies, and he beat the Rangers 4-3. Steve Tambellini scored a goal. And 19 months later, I was at the Meadowlands watching Chico Resch beat the Rangers and Steve Tambellini score a goal. And the Devils won their first game in New Jersey 3-2. So it's all coming together now. But as far as the trade goes, Bill Guerin, tapping into his inner Lou Lamoriello. I think he stole 3 good young players. He got a number 1 draft pick. He's only going to have Quinn Hughes for 18 more months max. You figured he was on the way out. Rick Tocchet got out. It's such a sinking ship over there. Sorry, Jerry, for that, but that's kind of the way it seems here. So I think that Billy got the most he could. I heard scuttlebutt, and again, I'm not at the rink anymore, but through people I know that Vancouver may have been asking the Devils for Jesper Bratt, may have been asking for Nico Hischier. They definitely wanted Simone Nemec, who, by the way, is now hurting out for the foreseeable future. Just heard that this morning. And a number 1 pick. And look, the Devils are a mess. Are they going to recover? We don't know. But why are you going to float all those assets if it's presumed that this guy is going to show up in 18 months just for cash? So I think good on Minnesota for getting one of the best players in the league, and I think very good for Vancouver because they got the equivalent of 4 number 1 picks in the draft. So that's good.
What do you think, Paul?
Well, I'm coming from a place where our general manager trades first round pick for a 4th line center in Philadelphia. So I thought 4 first round picks basically for Hughes, who was going to leave anyways, is a good return. And we don't know that, but he probably asked to be traded, but he didn't go to New Jersey, which is kind of odd. They're asking a lot of money, but they got Vancouver got good value. You're not going to see it now, but they've also kept their first round pick this year, right?
Which potentially could be the number 1 pick overall.
Exactly. So there's something where it's an added bonus. So the player they pick up first overall could be just as good as, well, maybe not as good as Hughes, but pretty good player. And you got to keep those draft picks. Accumulate. Look what Montreal did. They kept all those picks and they traded for more picks, and now they're on the rise. As soon as they get a goalie, they'll be, some team to hear from. So yeah, it's I like the trade for both teams actually.
What do you think, Stan?
As I said, I think many want it clearly because they got the best guy, and who knows how these draft picks are going to work out. I'll give you a good example. The Rangers have two guys in the minors right now. This Brennan Othman and Gabe Perreault, and they were listed for 3 straight years. They've been listed 1, 2 in the Hockey News best prospects. Well, Botman has been up and down like a yo-yo, and he doesn't have it. It's pretty clear now the Rangers have given up on this guy. So there's strike one with one, and then this other kid, Gabe Perreault, was supposed to be ready to fit in, and now it's just a 50-50 with him. So I'll put my money on Billy Guerin. I think Billy learned from. I don't think he learned from the master Lou Lamoriello, and like everything else, we'll see. The other thing that I think which is a very interesting deal involving Edmonton giving up on Stu, the Lou, winding up in Pittsburgh, and the Oilers coming up with a veteran, a Pitt veteran. And I tell you, in that one, I give it to Edmonton all the way. I think Stu Skinner is he's a loser. Why do you think they dumped him? I mean, he's been loser. He comes up with a big game every once in a while, and he gets a good interview. He's a great interview, but that doesn't cut it with me. The greatest interview I knew was on the Devils, and George knows who he is. Tell us.
Well, I mean, there's probably 15 or 20 guys you could pick over the years from the Devils, but the guy that I would always point to is Marty, because of all the crazy goalies we have met over the years and the intensity, and Billy Smith yelling at people for no reason at all. I mean, going way back to the 80s. You know the story. We saw Marty before Game 7 against Anaheim. I'm walking down the back hallway. Everybody's really nervous. All the TV crews are set up. And, you never talk to a goalie on game day, maybe not even talk to him in the morning skate. And I'm walking down the hall, and he's getting ready to do an interview with like Hockey Night. And he's laughing, talking to the guy from TSN. I'm like, they're winning the game. They're winning the game. And I went down the hall, and I told Stan, and sure enough, 3-0, Marty shut them out, and they won Game 7. The most accessible, funny superstar I think any of us will ever meet. Marty would be number 1 in my book.
Can't argue with that. Marty's always been great, but I just wonder what are they thinking? What is Duba, who was a failure as a GM with the Maple Leafs? What is he? Well, he was, wasn't he?
He sure was.
He got all these rich guys. He was paying everybody a lot of dough. He made a colossal mistake in John Tavares, thinking that he was going to be the difference, and he was the difference. The Islanders were better without him, and they're still better without him. But the point is, why would Pittsburgh think that they're getting something special in Skinner? I don't know, but it's an interesting trade nonetheless.
Well, they did go to the finals twice in a row with Skinner, but like you said, you don't know if he's going to come through when it counts.
He doesn't really have that much experience with playoffs, as well, as Jerry said earlier on today. Jerry, right?
Yeah, he's only had 8 games in the playoffs, or 8 playoff starts, and Skinner's had about 50. So, that they kind of lose. But Jerry is definitely an upgrade over Skinner. There's no doubt about that. We'll have to see how it works out in the end, because Tristan Jarry's still not an elite level goalie. He's good, he's very good, but yeah, he's not elite. So Oilers may not need elite, the talent they have up front. So we'll see where it goes from here.
That's
I
the
would
point.
say
You
that
made the point. He's better. They got a goalie who's better than the goalie who hasn't delivered for them. So it's a hell of a move. It's a hell of a move for the Oilers because now McDavid doesn't have any more alibis and Draisaitl and the rest of them. They got a better goalie. So now it's a question whether their defense is going to hold up. But I like it. I'm not saying Edmonton's going to win the cup. They're not going to win the cup, but at least they got a better chance.
Really, really interesting part is that Artur Silovs is the other goalie in Pittsburgh, and he's shown some flashes of brilliance. He played really well for the Canucks in the playoff run they had a couple years ago, and he won the Calder Cup last year in the American Hockey League, and he was the most valuable player. So Silovs, maybe it's his opportunity to steal that number one spot.
Okay, guy, I got to say something right now, and that is that Paul belongs into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Paul is the greatest and I've been around as long as anybody, and I know all about research because every single time, so he's batting 1,000. Every single time I lean on Paul for some research, he always delivers. So I think right now, Paul, I'm voting for you for the Hall of Fame, but I want you to tell us how you do what you do and how you got started in this magical business of being the number one research guy in the entire world. Tell us.
Sure, but I got to say, first of all, when you asked me for any assistance, that's a great honor to me. I mean, this is the Maven we're talking about. And I before I met you, wouldn't it be great to sit down with Stan and talk about the Max Bentley trade, which incidentally, Chicago Blackhawks still finished last with those 5 players, and at least went on to win cups. And the Rangers collapsed in 1959 playoffs. You told me stuff behind the scenes that I didn't know, things like that. And I got to know a lot of those players from the late 40s, early 50s. They were older by the time we had them at the alumni lunches, but, you were close to them. And you have a fascinating story about, listening to, Foster Hewitt in the 42 playoffs and things like that. But anyways, I started, I guess 25 years ago. I had lost my dad when I was 7. We used to watch Hockey Night in Canada together at every Saturday night. And I wanted to recreate that feeling. So I started reaching out to different places to see if they had any footage. Now we're talking maybe early 90s, I guess. And no one had anything. They said you'd call them and they say, no, we don't have it. They don't even bother looking. But I did get a tip to go to National Archives in Ottawa. And they had all those kinescopes from the 50s and 60s there. And I asked if I could, have a tip the game. And, so I was referred to Mostar Communications at the time. And because they owned all the copyright, and that's a long story. So I went to visit them and they talked to me for a few minutes. They said, we want to hire you. You know more about what's going on than anybody else. And then I got to work with Leafs TV. We did the classic games there. I worked with, one thing led to another. CBC, NHL, TSN, Sportsnet, all these places. I've worked on documentaries. I've worked on movies too. The last one we just did was the Boria Salming one. I don't know if you've seen it, but I was involved with the script and practically everything. I even had a cameo in there. But basically, one thing led to another. If you do a good job and you show that you know what you're doing, and you have access, which I had, then it's a lot easier. Now, what I have, people can look at video or a photo and just look at it and say, well, so-and-so is playing. But I look for the backstories, and I like to know what's significant about that particular play. I mean, after 1942, the Leafs, Langell scored the winning goals, okay? And the goalie's not in the net, and the photo doesn't show what happened. But the video from the other angle, that's quite a thing to find a video from the 42, shows exactly what happened. And actually the Leaf player should have been, called for a penalty. The Detroit player should have been called for penalty anyways. Stuff like that is fascinating. And it does, with my video, it corrects a lot of things that people say happened. And I just love doing it. And I do a lot of tapes for players. I must be over 300 by now. And then I met Len Gould, who really took over. I mean, what a great person. And we both share the same interests. And if it wasn't for us, we probably wouldn't have half that stuff. What's for the families of the players who are not around, they really love to see the footage that they've never seen before.
What is your the number one favorite find since you've been doing this? The number one,
that's a tough one.
Best.
In Toronto, they always talk about the Broco goal, right? And the National Archives has a lot of footage there, but it's not always labeled. There's something called unidentified reel. So I got permission to order it, and I did. And I'm watching it, and I'm saying, "Wow, it's Montreal, Toronto." I say, "Well, Broco is really number 5. It must be 51." And I'm going on. I said, "Can this be the game when Broco scores in overtime, the entire game?" And it was. And then I had the post game afterwards on the ice, all this footage of them lifting Broco and Stanley Cup and all that stuff. And that has never, ever been shown because it was Shanny McKenzie who filmed all those games in the 40s and 50s and early 60s, and they were all preserved. And I've been, gathering all those. And so that was one of the best finds I've had.
Let me just ask you one more thing because I didn't get it clear. I saw pictures of the winning goal or the big goal in 42 when the Leafs won the cup.
Yeah.
And you can't see the goalie. You can't see where he is. Now, what happened on that? Well, I see the Leafs got the hand, and I can't find what happened. Where was the goalie?
I will send you the video, okay? And it's from the other side, and the goalie's towards the left of the goal, but he's entangled with a Detroit player and a Leaf player. And he can't get back into the net, obviously. It's an empty net. That's what happened. But people think, oh, that's an empty net goal. No, it's not. The goalie, Langell was a hero after that. And I actually met Pete Langell at the closing of the Gardens, some I guess 20 years ago, more than that now. And it was great to meet all those old former players. And yeah, that's just one example. I can tell you so many where the film can explain what really happened. See, and it's nice.
Can you talk about these weekly lunches you have that with all this NHL alumni and people associated with
monthly
the game?
luncheons? Even Stan contributed once for the Eddie Shack show. Remember that, Stan?
Yeah.
Because Stan remembers Eddie from the Rangers. This started, I think, in the 70s or 80s. And at that time, the players that were coming were all Stan's buddies there. Sid Smith, Harry Watson, and all these guys. Remember Stan?
Yes, yeah.
Actually, over the years, they we lost them, okay? And there's only 2 left from the original time. Ron Hurst, who's 94 years old, and he came to the lunch the other day. And so did Alina, by the way. Yeah. And Brian McFarland, and both 94 years old. So other than that, we're trying to, we just lost Bob Bond, who was a regular, and Bob Nevin and all these players. So we're trying to get the younger players, like the present day players, forget them, or the ones that just retired. They're not interested, but it's the guys from the 70s and 80s what we're getting. So we even had Paul Henderson come talk about the 72 series. We've had Reggie Leach. We've had all kinds of great people. So it's once a month. And the Christmas one's the biggest one we had. We had over 180 people there. And, I sort of have to organize it, but I have help now. And I took over when the fellow who was doing it, he passed away, and somebody Bobby Bonds said to me, "You got to keep it going for the players." And I wish you guys could come if you're ever in Toronto. And it works out. It'd be great to have you guys. Well, Elena, what did you think of the lunch
It was
there?
lovely. It was really, really nice. I had so much fun.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get to a hot item with starting with George. The Devils were flying high. They looked like they were going to be in first place. They were talking about them as a cup contender, and now they're in the pits. And because of the crazy accident that happened at a steak dinner to their best player, Jack Hughes, who's still out. We don't know when he's coming back. But I want to know if their goaltender is falling apart. They paid big money. They made a big deal about signing this guy Markstrom, and it looks like he's going to go down with him. What's the story with the Devils? I want to know, are they going to sink?
Well, they're currently sinking, so it's kind of present tense right now. We'll see what happens. They're playing the Ducks as we're recording. That game's later today. They're a train wreck, and a lot of that falls on Jack Hughes. And now, look, I'm very clear in saying I'm not covering the team currently. I'm not out there with my college students a lot, showing them the ropes of the arena and the press room and all that stuff. But you do hear things. And one of the things we learn, and I think, anytime you deal with media relations or public relations firms, when things are good, there's cookies and cakes and balloons and the lights are on and there's a party going, the disco ball is going around. But when things go bad, the shades get shut, the doors get locked, the lights go out, get out of the building. And I think that has what has happened with Jack. And I can only go on like third-hand stuff coming from me. But that when they say he slipped and fell on a piece of broken glass at a restaurant, that seems, I'll just say, a little unlikely. Because if there's any broken glass on the floor at a fancy steakhouse in Chicago, one would assume there are 75 waiters who will come out and pick it up within 10 seconds and get it off and whatever. So there are some rumors, there's some stories, who knows? But if it was irresponsible stuff, that's a problem when you're a number one player and you see how all the offense has kind of crumbled without him there, which to me may speak more to the other parts of that team, that they can't function without Jack Hughes on the top line being the center. Markstrom is an interesting case because what did we hear for years? Devils need a goalie. Mackenzie Blackwood gets hurt too much. Wedgwood's not good enough. Well, you put them on a good team and look what happens. And the teams in front of those guys were never very good. So they finally have that long dance to get Markstrom, who wants to be here. And he comes in, and now I get a chance to watch him more than like once a week in a Calgary game or this game. And you'd see him make these great saves, and he's fast and he's moving, but then he'd let one go in the 6-hole or one gets through the 5-hole. And okay, well, whatever. He's a veteran. He's good. Signs the extension. He hasn't played well this year. He was terrible the other night. Our friend Anthony Fucilli, the Fooch, Stan and I know him from our MSG days. I love watching post-game shows, by the way, after bad losses, whatever the sport is, because it's fun. It's kind of like following, the ambulance around, but you want to hear what they have to say after a bad loss. And Fooch just calmly said, "Is everything okay? Are you feeling 100%?" And Markstrom just kind of, it gives him the death stare. We've all been there. But I think we all know if you've been in a dressing room, we're not used to that from hockey players. We're not used to not getting, even if it's a middling answer without some sincerity behind it or they're cooperative. Markstrom was just looking at him like crazy. So you have Fitz, who got the goalie everybody wanted, and then they gave him a 2-year extension. Now we're dealing with this. Who knows? He gave Jake Allen a 5-year extension, but at good money, it's less than $2 million a year. So you can see where he would be maybe the mentor for the next guy that comes along, maybe the kid at Boston University who's a sophomore, the big Russian kid. I don't know. One thing leads to another. Nemec is hurt. Pesci's hurt. Timo's on a personal leave right now. Jack, who knows what he's doing? I'm just saying, I don't think you can slip and fall and your hand hits a piece of glass and it cuts the tendon in your pinky. That's all I'm saying. So they've gone from way up here to way down here. And now they didn't get Quinn, which everybody thought was going to happen. And now they're scrambling. I think I read something. They've lost 150 man games to injury already. And of course, there's nothing more entertaining than Devil's Twitter when things are going poorly. So or X, if you want to call it that. Read the comments. They all want to hang Fitzgerald. They want to get rid of this guy, fire the coach. Keefe's no good. And all these armchair GMs it's hysterical to hear what they have to say, but it's a mess. Amazing what can happen in over like a 4-week period, how a team could be way up and now they're just on this slide, and who knows? And if they don't make the playoffs, who's responsible? You tell me.
Well, I want to get on to a happy note. Tonight, Patty LaFontaine is going to be honored. He's going to be inducted into the Islanders Hall of Fame. I know him from when he came to the team. I want to know what you guys think of Patty LaFontaine from a different viewpoint. T-Back, what do you think of this guy? What does he mean to you, if anything?
Well, my best memory of Pat LaFontaine was the Easter game. Where Kelly Rudy made 75 saves, and I was homesick that night, so I sat myself in front of the TV and I watched that game from beginning to end, and amazing save after amazing save from both Rudy and Bob Mason, and it was close. I think close to midnight when Pat LaFontaine finally scored that goal. And to me, Pat LaFontaine is a no doubter for the Hall of Fame. I mean, I always say there's good careers, there's great careers, and then there's Hall of Fame careers. Pat LaFontaine had a no doubt Hall of Fame career, and he belongs there.
Paul, what about you? What do you think of him?
Well, first of all I hear about Pat LaFontaine is a class guy, really good person. It's a shame that he had that concussion and his career could have continued even more. And who knows what he would have done. He's just a skilled guy. He made his line mates better too. I mean, didn't he play with McGillney on the one in Buffalo? He had with Andrew Chuck, and he was just a shame that he didn't continue his career. I think he wanted to, but they wouldn't allow him to. And it's about time that they're going to do something for him. I mean, you can't wait. I mean, 4 years ago, the Detroit Red Wings finally retired Red Kelly's number. Years later, how many years later? So it's best to do it when they're still active and able. And by the way, going back to the lunch thing, Frank Mahovlich couldn't make it, but I was going to ask him about that when you were sitting beside him and when you had, was it a grapefruit that you did and it went right into his eye or something like that?
He was going for 50 goals, and I had to do a story on him for Sport Magazine. And we had breakfast at the Commodore Hotel. The Leafs were the only team in the league when it was 6 teams that stayed at the Commodore because it was right next to Grand Central Station. And so we're having breakfast, and I ordered for my opener a half a grapefruit, and I stuck my spoon in, and it went directly into Frank Mahovich's right eye. And instead of getting angry with me, he laughed it off. I thought it was, he was one of the most on a list of most wonderful guys I ever dealt with.
Yeah,
Frank is up there. He's always been wonderful wherever he's been. I just want to give you my take on LaFontaine. I covered that game, the Easter Epic. It went way, way past midnight. It was 4 overtimes, and it was very difficult for us doing the game because we had to have guests in between periods. And it had so happened that Mike Bossy had been injured. So at the end of at the first break in the overtime, I had Mike Bossy, and then it went into a second overtime, and I said to my stage manager, John McComb, what do we do now? He said, I'm going to get Bossy again. We got him twice. I don't remember who we had for the third one. But the best part of it for me was our studio was 10 feet before the visitors' dressing room. So after he scored the goal, the team walked right past us. And instead of waiting for PR or anything, my guy McComb grabbed Patty, who was already a buddy of mine, pulled him in, and we got that first interview right after he had done it, and but it was crazy. It was a crazy. Imagine to go into 4 overtimes, and what he said, it was a strange situation because the Islanders had made a change, and somebody came off a forward, and Patty jumped on, but the defenseman Gordy Dineen had gambled and went behind the net, so Patty was actually at the defense position by the blue line, and the puck came out, bounced off two of the Washington guys, and Patty just blindly swung at it, and it beat Bob. I can still see Bob Mason. He was actually stunned. He was like a mummy after the puck went in because he was totally screened on the play. It was unbelievable.
Stan, I got one quick LaFontaine for you, just so you guys all know the personality. If you've met him, you know how nice he is. Every time Buffalo or the Islanders, when I was working with the Bruins, we would try to get LaFontaine to come on between periods. And you had to clump up those stairs to get to our interview room at the old Garden. And Pat LaFontaine, superstar, every time he came in the room, he would introduce himself to everybody on the group. Shake the cameraman's in. Hi, I'm Pat LaFontaine. There's the assistant director. Hi, I'm Pat LaFontaine. I'm like, we know who you are. He goes, I'm Pat LaFontaine. I'm like, we know you're Pat LaFontaine. Do a great interview. Here's your gift. Here's your Seiko watch or Polaroid camera. One of the top 5 nicest guys in the history of nice guys. And I think anybody who's ever dealt with him would certainly put him maybe top 4 for the Mount Rushmore of George's favorite interviews, but he would be right there.
He's also started many years ago Companions in Courage, which his charity sets up rooms for ailing kids in hospitals. Not a real happy room, and he started it in Buffalo, and it's been all over the place, and he's been doing it for, I would say now, decades. It's a very, very interesting and very fruitful and wonderful thing that the guy did. Now, before we forget, or I forget, I know Georgie had some Boston stories that you wanted to tell us. So
couple.
Do it now before we all forget.
Well, I mean, if you want to go back to the old Garden, like I'll show it up again. This is Stan and I. There we are at the old Garden. That was the last series played at the old Garden. A little fun trivia for Devils fans. The Devils won the last 6 playoff games at Boston Garden. They won 3 in a row twice in 94 and 95. And I want to get this out there because if I ever do a hockey book, the story's in there. Everybody talks about Phil Esposito night and Ray Bourque taking off the jersey and handing him number 7, and Bourque's wearing 77. And only Harry Sinden and Bourque and the equipment manager and Terry knew about it. Well, I got news for everybody. There was one other guy that knew what was going on, and it's me. Because I went in early that night. Nobody was talking about the retired number ceremony. Maybe everybody was talking about it for weeks. And even at the morning skate, you'd say, well, what do you think? And they go, well, we don't know what he's going to do. And Ray was playing it cool. So I cleverly said, would you be our first period guest? Yes, I would. Left unsaid. I got to the Garden about 4:00. Got there early. Everybody's nervous. All these VIPs are coming in. And I go into the Bruins dressing room, which is this tiny little room with a weight room off the back. And Terry O'Reilly is in the weight room, and he's the coach, and he's doing his sit-ups. And Terry and I always got along great. Also in my top 5, by the way. And I asked him, I said, I got to ask you, Terry. I said, is Ray going to do it? And he just looks at me and he says, well, why should I tell you? And Terry with the eyes would get really thin, and he'd look at you and he'd scare the hell out of you just by being nice. He would scare. And I said, if he's going to do it, we want to make sure we get it. I'm part of the crew. I'm going to be in the penalty box. You can see me in the video, by the way, on the far right, if you ever see Espo Night video. And I said, we want to make sure we get it. We want to do it right. And so he's sitting back like this, and he looks at me and he goes, it's nods. So I run down the hall. I'm like, I've got the $1 million thing. And I go up to my producer, Mark Quinzel, and Dave Shea was our talent. I'm like, yeah, he's doing it. We can't tell anybody. And they start leaning on me. Now they're like, well, go get Harry. We got to talk to Harry about this. And I said, no, we can't talk to Harry because then he'll know Terry told me. And then Taz will get in trouble. And you know how it is when you're a young guy in the business or a young person in the business, and your bosses start leaning in on you. So I cave in. I go down the steps. I'm walking back down. I got to cross over to 150 Causeway Street. It was connected to the garden. And I pass the dressing room, and there's that big spoked bee, and it's just looking at me. So I turn left and I go in, and I go to the coach's office, and Terry's now taking a shower. He's putting his shirt and tie. I go, Terry, Mark and Dave are leaning on. Want me to talk to Harry? Because you can't do that. I said, I know that. I said, that's why I'm here. I said, could you join me just for a moment down the hall? And so he smiles. Down the hall we go. And again, he goes up the steps to the interview. There's Dave Shea. There's Mark Quinzel, who ended up NFL Network, ESPN, phenomenal. And Terry, 6'3", right? These guys aren't quite that. Terry, I'm down halfway down the stairs, and Terry is just looking at him, and he's going. And I can't hear what he's saying, but you have a very good idea. And they're looking at Terry, and they're going like this. So Terry turns around, comes down the steps as he's clopping by me. He looks at me and he winks. And that was the end of it. So I immediately, quick on my feet, said, hey, guys, I have an idea. Why don't I go get Harry and ask him to come on during the first period intermission? That way we don't know anything. And as it turned out, I was right there. Ray took off the sweater, gave it to Espo, one of the greatest nights in Bruins history. Ray was our immediate first period guest. We had him. He left. Harry came in. We got it all done. But I'm not a big give me credit guy, but I knew. So when they say on the Bruins broadcast that nobody knew, this guy knew. We knew, and we were ready to go because of that. But that was one of my favorite nights up there. That was unbelievable. Long story, but I hope it's a good one.
Ask Paul, who is your favorite Toronto Maple Leaf of all time?
Well, the Big M, Frank Mahovlich. I've got to know him, for a long time now, and he's such a thoughtful person, cares about other people. That he's different than most players, and he was a great player, obviously, but he's so sensitive and caring, and I spent time with him, and he had number 27. He had those long strides, and he'd take the puck from one end to the other. In his prime, he was fantastic, even though it was tough playing for Imlach. And the last two digits are his of his phone number, 0727. Well, my my birthday is 0727. I think everything just mixed together with the Big M, and I just love his stories. And when he walks into a room, he's just like he's God there. I mean, he's such a magnificent person and player, and he was my favorite. Keon was also favorite, but Frank Mahovlich, I would say.
Okay, Frank's a great guy, great player. His coach and GM, Punch Imlach, tortured him.
Yeah.
Why did Punch Imlach torture this great guy? He practically gave Frank a nervous breakdown. Why did Imlach treat him like dirt? Tell us.
I talked to Dick Duff, and Duff says about Imlach, that's just the way he was. That's the kind of person Imlach was. Now, he almost destroyed him, but Frank, to this day, and he won't do it publicly, but boy, he'll tell you some bad words about Imlach, the way it really bothered Frank, and twice he had to be hospitalized for nervous breakdown. The best thing was trading him for his sake, and he had some great years later on, more cups. But Imlach did that to Carl Brewer. He did that to Mike Walton, and some of the players really couldn't handle that, and the older guys, they didn't care. But yeah, would the Leafs have won more cups if they had different coaches? Possible. The players think so. But Frank, he never said anything back. He just suffered there, and it was too bad.
I tell you one story about Imlach. I covered the first of the 4 Leafs Stanley Cup wins in Chicago, and I went down into the dressing room. This is a time for jubilation. Yeah. Jubilation. I mean, this is fantastic. And I'm down in that dressing room, and what Punch Imlach was doing, he was yelling at the players to hurry up and get out of there so they could get on the bus. I remember Billy Harris, not the Billy Harris from the Island. Billy Harris was taking pictures on some cheap little camera that he had, and Imlach was bawling these guys out for winning the cup. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Well, the bottom line is this was punch, but he won 4 cups.
Yeah, he did, but he didn't give credit to his players. He took it as he won them, and that's what the players didn't like. But yeah, at that dressing room in '62, even Eddie Shack says, "Look at this, we won the cup," and he can't even enjoy that. You see, and also, and Bobby Bond told a story about how they were celebrating, and Bert Olmsted, who won cups in Montreal. He just shook his head and laughed at these guys and says, "You haven't won nothing yet." His first Stanley Cup. But and then they found the Bill Broko's body just a month after that. So that's another story with the Broko curse. Yeah.
Speaking of chasing cups, what's going on with Rangers? Why are they so up and down this year? What do you think, Stan?
Sean Avery was on last week on our Bottle Rocket. And Sean Avery, who still bleeds Rangers, he calls the Rangers a yo-yo. Yo-yo goes up, yo-yo goes down. Now, their last game was in Chicago. They had a 2-day rest. They played Sunday, and then they were off for 2 days. And they go out on the ice having a 2-day rest, and they looked like they were sleepwalking. Now, how do you explain? Now they're playing tonight they're going to be playing the Canadiens. How do you explain that? Are these guys, are they spoiled? Are they fat cats? I mean, how do you not? And they're playing Chicago. Chicago had the team is young. They had one of the second youngest defense in the league, and the Rangers couldn't score a single goal. Now, the question is, are they a team? Are they schizophrenic or what? You have to say they are because they're doing, they're a yo-yo. But it's the season isn't even half over, and a lot can happen. But the point is, they appear to be fat cats right now. You can't alibi what they did, and then they'll go on the road and another time and they'll beat one of the better teams. So I really have to tell you, Elena and guys, this is the league is full of it's parity. It's parity. You can't pick a team in the Met division unless you're going to rule out the Devils now. But you can't pick a winner now. I mean, they're all so close. So the answer in the Rangers is that they need a dozen shrinks. That's what they need. A dozen shrinks to coach that team.
Stan, how about that? Didn't the Rangers try that in the 50s, early 50s? They brought in some doctor or some psychiatrist or some.
Great story. They did a couple of crazy things. They went to the 7th game, double overtime in the final in 1950. 7-game series, and they had to play every single game on the road because the circus was at the old Garden, and they got tossed out. Now, the next season is 50-51. There was great hopes for the team. And they had an accident at the beginning of training camp, and everything went wrong. So what happened was the restaurateur who had the hockey luncheons every Tuesday, Gene Leone, he concocted a drink that he's called a magic elixir. And the magic elixir is supposed to make the team win if they drink the stuff before the game. And sure enough, he had it in a big back bottle, and nobody paid too much attention, except they won the game. And then they won another game. And now they're going to be playing the Maple Leafs on Saturday at Maple Leaf Gardens. And now a big deal is made about it, and they had to bring the magic elixir in the black bottle to Toronto. And Connie Smythe, the Maple Leafs boss heard about it. He wanted no part of it. He didn't want to lose anyhow. So he alerted the customs guys at Malton Airport, which is where the team flight landed, to make sure that they got hold of that black bottle. Ain't going to get into the Maple Leaf Gardens know-how. And the guy who was carrying the bottle was a World Telegram writer, Jim Burchett, who was the dean of the hockey writer. He was covering the Rangers from 1926, and he was a big guy and a tough guy. And so the plane lands, and the customs guys grab it, you see. But Burchett had pals who were also above the customs guys, and he got hold of somebody, and they got the black bottle back, and then he got a police escort to Maple Leaf Gardens, and nobody's going to touch that black bottle. And I have pictures of Jim Burchett with the black bottle before they brought it into the room, and Penty Lund of the Rangers is looking up at the bottle. It's a classic picture. Well, what do you know? The Maple Leafs always beat the Rangers at Maple Leaf Gardens, and that night, the black bottle got him a win. And Connie Smythe had nothing to do with it. Well, after that, a couple of days later, they started to lose, and everybody forgot about the black bottle. So now they're losing again, and this time the Rangers bring in a hypnotist. And that hypnotist's name was Dr. David Tracy, and he had worked on one of the baseball teams the previous summer, and for some reason they thought he could help the Rangers, and he got the guys together, and he did the seance with them, and they did the whole schmear in the afternoon of the game. And then what do you think happened? They played the Bruins, and they were leading by a goal with a minute left to the game. Looked like it was going to be a real winner for Dr. Tracy and the hypnotized Rangers. Bruins scored in the last minute and ends up in a 1-1 tie because they didn't play overtime in those days. So after the game, all the writers got hold of Dr. Tracy and asked him, okay, they were supposed to win. Why didn't they win? And Dr. Tracy's answer was, and this is exactly what he said. He was referring to Charlie Rayner. He said, the goalie was not paying attention. And that was it. And by the way, they missed the playoff. They missed the playoffs in 51. They missed it in 52. They missed it in 53. They missed it in 54, 55. And then they finally got. So that's what happened with the hypnotist. It was, but the great thing about it is Frank Boucher, who was the manager, he's a wonderful guy. He thought these gimmicks were great fun, and they were great fun. The only problem was they didn't work.
Well, the Leafs did that in mid-60s. They brought the Chum Witch in. I don't know if you know that story, but Imlach tried all kinds of superstitious stuff. So I love that story, Stan. Great.
The Leafs actually brought in horses and an equine therapist during training camp as part of a mental performance and team building exercise.
Well, they also brought in a former wrestler to Fred Atkins. I don't know if you remember him, to get the players in shape in training camp. And they try all kinds of things because there's still a hex on the Leafs for not winning the Cups in '67. We can blame Larry Hellman, we can blame all kinds of people, but it's still fun to talk about. Yeah.
We need some holy water and exorcist at this point.
Or a black bottle.
Yeah, that's right. We ought to try that. Not the hypnotist. I don't think they'll go for that, though. Don't drink anything, though.
My view of the Rangers right now is that they're not consistent in their efforts, and that's on the coach. So, you gotta be consistent in this league, or you're going nowhere. You're going to be a 500 hockey team. So, and that falls on the coaching. So.
Well, you're right. And everybody, well, I shouldn't say it, but the key guys in the high command are all Boston guys from BC. And if you want to say what's wrong with the team, I agree with T-Bag. The coach should be able to get them up. Or if not the coach, then the captain. And the captain happens to be a guy who was booted out of Vancouver all the way to Manhattan, and J.T. Miller. This guy was the wrong guy to be captain. He never should have been named the captain. And he was named by the GM, by Drury. Trocheck should have been the captain. So you look at the line after the last game, after that game in Chicago. What does JT Miller say? The same thing he's been saying over and over again. I should be better. Well, if you should be better, why the heck aren't you better? And guess what? JT Miller, the captain of the team, has the worst plus minus on the club. So between the coach and JT, that's why they're a yo-yo.
Speaking of coaches, Paul Maurice is such an incredible coach. Do you guys think Florida missed the playoffs this year, or they're going to make it?
Well, I don't think you want my opinion about the Florida Panthers.
We're in the same boat. I'm a Leafs fan.
Yeah, well,
I worry about them. I love that team, and that they're down at the bottom, but there's not far from the top, and they got a ton of injuries. And I hope I'll be very, very upset if they don't get back in. Because if they get back in, they're built to have a good run, and they have a wonderful coach. I mean, you could say they're biding their time, but the one thing I worry about from the Florida viewpoint is the goalie. Bob is getting old, and there's nothing you can do to make him young. Unless you give him Leone's magic elixir in the black bottle.
Yeah. And he's got to pay attention.
Oh, that's funny. Florida is a really great team. They got everything they need, but they sort of get away with murder on the ice. I'm not sure about what's going on there, but yeah, that's for another show. Talk about
I've said that no team is going to ever win 3 Stanley Cups in a row, and it's a simple word: attrition. It's just too much. They have short summers. They don't. It's just too much on these guys, particularly the hockey now. I mean, I've never seen, I don't know what you guys think. I've never seen so many injuries.
Yeah.
So many teams with so many injuries. I mean, the other night, Bedard, Chicago was taking a face-off with 1 second left, and the guy sticks him in the face, and he's out. It's crazy stuff. But I'm positive that the reason for all these injuries is that the rink is too small and the players are too big. 1917, the rink was 200 feet by 85 feet, and the players were averaging about 5'7", 5'8", about 160 pounds, and the rink is still 200 by 85 feet, and players are now 6'7". Guys on the Rangers, guy is 6'9". One team has a guy in juniors now, he is 7 feet tall. Whoa. That is not enough room on the ice. And they're skating so fast, and this is what's happening.
I think the other problem too is the condensed schedule now with the Olympics. Yes. Teams aren't getting enough downtime, practice time, so bodies can't recover. I mean, just on a tiny similarity to that, my son plays roller and ice, and over the summer he was playing a lot, and I'm like, you played 3 games yesterday. You're playing again tomorrow. You're not, and they're 20 years old. They think they can just bounce right back, and maybe they can, but bodies need to rest and recover. Doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are. And these guys, they're not getting enough practice time, which shows on the ice. The quality of the game, I think, is dropping, and also the fact that the injuries. Because if your body can't recover, I mean, anybody who's played sports knows that if you really work hard in a game, the next day is not a good day, and maybe the second day is a little bit better. But if you got to go out and play again, I think you're really playing with fire. But you know what? It's not about the schedule. It's about this. And unfortunately, I think the money's going to rule the roost, whether it comes to TV, sports, whatever the deal is. And they're just cramming these games in, and the players are suffering. And if the players suffer, the product suffers. So,
and if you think the rink is too small now, you're going to love the Olympics because the rink is even smaller. So it's
Yeah,
like,
wait a
what
minute.
do
There
you
may
gotta
not
work
even
on?
be a rink. They may not. They may
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's like
Crazy.
197 by 85, I think. So it's three feet shorter. So yeah, and there might
I
not
heard
be
they
a
might,
rink.
Stan, they might play some of the games here at South Mountain Arena in West Orange.
Yeah.
Because they got two rinks right back to back. We can do it up there.
Yeah.
Listen, I promised before we wound up, and I guess we're pretty close to it. I promised that I had a silly riddle and a joke to tell, okay? So the riddle is, why is an elephant big, gray, and wrinkled? Why is an elephant big, gray, and wrinkled? And you give up? Because if he was small, white, and round, he'd be an aspirin.
Oh,
It's,
What,
Wait till you call me in the morning. There you go.
I warned you about that one. I warned you about that one.
you tell that to Gary Bettman. Don't you tell him a joke every time you talk to him?
I don't know how you knew about this, but I do it with not only with him, but with Bill Daley, who's the deputy commissioner. This all started when we were doing television for the Devils games in 1994, 95. This was after the lockout. Remember, the lockout lasted deep into the 94, 95 season. So to get content during the lockout, we did Devils Farm Team, which was the Albany River Rats. And we did an exhibition game in September of 94. And before the production meeting, I told my producer, Roland Dratch, I'd heard a gag, and I'd asked him can I tell it to the crew? He says, yeah. I told the gag, and they loved the gag, and we did another game. We did 6 games, and for the second game, I had heard another gag, and I said, Roland, can I tell this gag? He said, yeah, tell the gag. And they loved the gag, and he says, I want you to tell a joke at every single production meeting, through the season, which I did. And coincidentally, that's when the Devils won their first Stanley Cup. In I was in 95. We were in Detroit. So that's the story behind the joke. Do you want to hear the joke now?
I have been eyewitness to many of Stan's pregame jokes.
Yeah.
And all I can tell you is the composition of the crew decided how colorful each joke would be. So I'll leave it that for another show. But it was Ed Placey, wherever you are, what are you doing?
Okay, so this woman's husband disappeared, and she goes to the cops, right? And they ask her for a description of the husband. And she says he's 6 feet tall, 3 inches, he's 6 feet 3 inches tall, well built, and with thick, curly hair. And her friend is with her, and she's telling this to the cop. And her friend says, what are you talking about, Celia? Your husband is 5 feet 4, bald, and has a huge belly. And she says, who wants that one back?
Yeah.
I'll do this for you guys. I'll set Stan up for the next podcast. You got to tell the same joke, except with the penguin looking for her husband.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the one you got to tell next time.
Okay, next one. Requestfully yours.
My last question for Paul. I did a podcast with Glenn Dreyfus on the Hockey Time Machine, and he had 2 of us on that day, one after the other. And the guy who was on before me was Patty Adair, who has an incredible story to tell, and he comes to those monthly lunches. Am I correct?
It blacked out for a second there. That's where I seen you on our Hockey Time Machine show. Teabag is what I remember. Yeah, Glenn Dreyfus does a fantastic job. And yesterday, we just interviewed Scotty Bowman, Serge Savard, and Steve Schutt for the 50th anniversary of that Red Army Montreal game.
Wow.
And yeah, so anyway, can you tell me your question again? Because it sort of blacked out a bit.
the other guest on that day was Patty Adair, who
Yeah.
has an incredible hockey tale. Can you tell us about Patty?
Well, Patty's he's a funny guy. I mean, there's this famous picture of him with St. Catherine's teepees, 1957, and he's centering Hull and Makita. That's pretty good. But Patty had this emotional problems or something, so he didn't perform like he should have, and he went to Europe and became the, as he says, the Maurice Richard of Holland. Because he was that good. And if you look at his stats, they were good. So we ran into him a few years ago and asked him to come to the lunches, because we'd like to find these players who weren't stars, and because they like to be remembered now. And Patty's a big part of that. So he played hockey up until about 7 years ago. He's in his 80s now, and just a tremendous fellow.
Thank you so much, guys. I'm going to wrap it up here. Like Jerry said, we had a real hockey panel today, honestly, a bit of a hockey pentagon. Paul, George, thank you so much for joining us. Big thanks as always to Jerry and Maeve. And thank you to everyone for listening. Make sure to subscribe to Bottle Rocket wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll catch you next time.